What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you actually get better at Fortnite Zero Build. If you are someone who does want to get better at the game, as always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below one thing that has helped you improve most, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So again, if you clicked on this video, it's because you're someone who wants to improve at the game and get better, become a better fighter, and win more consistently. I think the biggest thing that holds a lot of people back when it comes to improving in Fortnite or any Battle Royale is that Battle Royales naturally are difficult games to improve in because the style of the game often leads to a lot of players not getting in fights or not getting in fights very frequently, especially when somebody is new to the game because, you know, most people, they install the game, they're like, I really want to get my first win. And then they get their first win and they want more and more and more. And wins become the driving factor for a lot of players. And a lot of people's play style, especially early on, can kind of warp around getting a win more so than actually getting or like improving at the game to the point where just winning comes easy. And that's what we're going to tackle in this video, is how you want to play if you want to get better at the game to the point where winning becomes easy. And the mindset you want to have with this sort of thing is that you need to be okay with winning less in the short term to get better in the long run. And that's why I said a lot of people's playstyle early on kind of warps around winning, and why it's a bad thing. Because if you do want to get better, you're probably going to need to get in more fights and take more risks and kind of take a few steps back so that you can take several steps forward. But if all you're doing is trying to win, you're probably going to play more risk averse, more safe, more passive, get in less fights, and in the long run, you will have had less fighting experience compared to the amount of time that you've been playing. Playing very passive, you could definitely get wins that way. You can win somewhat consistently this way. But a lot of times you're only going to win, like let's just take a hypothetical player who's terrible at fighting. They're a 1 out of 10 fighter, but they're willing to hide all game and they're going to rotate dead side of zone constantly and play that way to try to get a win. This can work. They can win this way sometimes. But a lot of it is going to come down to getting lucky timing, maybe third partying the final fight, and or just happening to get lucky enough to where the final player is also not very good. So a lot of things kind of have to go their way and fall into place for them to win, right? But if you're someone who is good at fighting, let's just say hypothetical 10 out of 10 fighter, you're going to be able to win a majority of your games regardless of how you play, because you can kind of flex your skill advantage on the rest of the lobby and win that way. Less things kind of have to line up and go a certain way for you to win because you create those opportunities for yourself. So if you do want to consistently win and do better in this game, I think improving as a fighter is incredibly important, because things are just going to be less situational for you in terms of like what works out for you. Also, Fortnite does have, you know, skill-based matchmaking. And again, you might be able to win consistently playing really passive and not learning how to fight early on. But as you do this and get in harder and harder lobbies, you're going to hit a wall where like it just doesn't work anymore because, you know, people are so much better at fighting than you. And to improve at fighting, you need to get in more fights and play more aggressive. And this will likely mean you lose a lot in the short term, but you will improve and you will get better at fighting. If you hide all game, let's just say hypothetically, you hid all game, you landed at a very low-key spot, you rotated on the edges of the zone, you saw nobody until the final player. You probably spent about 20 minutes in one game to get in one engagement, and maybe you win, maybe you lose, right? But if you get in, that's one engagement every 20 minutes, hypothetically. But if you play more aggressive and get in more fights, you can get in, you know, 10, 20 fights in the same amount of time, and just that repetition and, you know, winning those fights or losing those fights and getting that experience, I think will go a long way in helping you improve. Also, I know a lot of people get nervous or they get scared fighting, and I think this also comes from lack of experience, because if you've played more and you've won a lot of fights and you've lost a lot of fights, it's not as stressful, it's not as nerve-wracking. I think a lot of nerves that people have with things comes from inexperience, and as you get more experience and get used to winning and get used to losing those fights, it's not going to matter as much. And also, a lot of people get nervous in the end game. Again, I think it's the same thing. As you play more and get more used to those situations, you kind of get nervous in end game less. But if you're already nervous in every single fight you get in, and you're very nervous because you're towards the end of the game, this is not a combination that's really going to work well for you in a lot of situations. So even if you did spend all game hiding, if you're shaking and can't really control yourself, it's probably not going to go your way. So I think getting good at fighting as a baseline is just what you need. It's like the foundation of being a good player, winning consistently. As you get in more fights, you'll improve your muscle memory with things like aim, movement, decision making in fights. Not necessarily like big scale, like how you rotate, but just like, do I slide out to challenge them or do I jump to challenge them? Like those, you're making so many small decisions in a fight. And then also your aim and your movement are skills that you will improve over time as you get in more fights. But if you don't get in fights, you're not going to develop these skills as much and you're not going to be as like fluid of a fighter. Lots of players, as I said, they get nervous or scared in fights. And if you're nervous and your aim isn't great because you don't fight a lot, all of these things are just going to compound and make it harder for you to win. So getting over that fear of fighting and building some skill with fighting is so important if you want to consistently win in this game, especially as you start to get placed in higher matches because you've played for longer. You can play more aggressive in Battle Royale and get in more fights this way. And that'll be better than playing very passive, but Battle Royale is also just not naturally a time efficient game mode because like I said, the matches are 20 minutes long. If you lose the game, you have to, wait, find another one, load into that next game, loot up a bit. Like there's a lot of wasted times in Battle Royales when it comes to getting fighting experience. And so there are other modes that are better for practice, I think. There's countless creative maps out there that are basically just never-ending death matches where you can get in fight after fight after fight after fight with pretty much no downtime. We talked before about like the 20-minute Battle Royale match and how it's not efficient. You could get in, 100 engagements in these creative maps in 20 minutes, and you might get destroyed by a lot of decent players in here, but that's still like a bunch of experience that you were able to gain in a very short time span, and things like that are going to go a long way when it comes to helping you improve. There's also like aim training maps. If your aim is not good and you feel just constantly uncomfortable aiming, some of these aim training maps can help you. When it comes to aim training, I think doing a small routine somewhat consistently is probably best. So maybe do like 5 to 10 minutes every time you get on rather than just like a 4-hour session of aim training. Like that's absurd and I don't think it's going to help that much, but doing it a little bit every now and then or somewhat consistently, I think can go a long way. And the same can be true of these deathmatch maps. You don't need to, play that exclusively, but maybe, before you hop on to play BR, play one of these creative maps, get in a bunch of fights, get warmed up that way. You get your experience fighting that way. You also get a lot of XP towards your battle pass. And all of this is going to go a long way, I think, in helping you improve as a player. And you probably spend a lot of time kind of waiting for other people to get on, potentially, if you're playing with friends anyways. And in that time, you could, instead of just waiting in the lobby or looking at the item shop, load into one of these creative maps where you can fight people, load into an aim training map, and just get a little bit of practice with time that probably wasn't going to be used well anyways. Reload mode and Blitz are also BR style game modes that you can play to get in fights, faster. Blitz are 5 minutes matches, and the lobby I think only has like 32 people, and it does die out kind of quick, but that's still, you're probably going to get in between 5 and 10 fights in 5 minutes. So that's better than Battle Royale. Same with Reload. The pacing of Reload is much faster because players are constantly respawning and coming back if they have respawn tokens or a teammate available. So these game modes can be much more time efficient than Battle Royale. And I know, again, I talked earlier about how, like, if you want to get better at fighting and win consistently, you're going to have to be okay with winning less in the short term. Not only was that about, like, taking more risks in Battle Royale and getting in more fights in Battle Royale, but also, the time you spend playing creative, you're not getting wins. And this is something I've seen a lot of people talk about is like, oh, it's a waste of time to play these other game modes because I don't care about those wins. And this kind of applies to what I was saying about being okay with winning less in the short term. If you are only caring about your Battle Royale wins, then sure, playing creative or playing Blitz or playing Reload might feel like a waste of time, but it goes into that mindset, like I said, of being okay with less wins in the short term so that you can get better and then win a lot more consistently in the long term. And so these other game modes, I think, are better than Battle Royale when it comes to just getting in sheer volume of fights. The final thing I want to talk about is something that's, somewhat consistent in Fortnite, and that is to not rely on the cheesy items, because in pretty much every Fortnite season, there's something. A decent example of this at the moment would be like the lock-on AR. I think we can all agree it's kind of cheesy. And so I don't remember when it came out, probably a week or two ago. So let's say it's been about a month. that it will have been in the game from when it launched until the end of season 1. If that entire month you just relied on the lock-on AR, sure, you might have gotten more success in the short term and gotten more wins in the short term using the lock-on AR. But in that time, you probably didn't really get better at fighting. You didn't develop aiming skill. You didn't, build muscle memory because you were using like a bailout item that essentially locked on. I mean, that's what it does. It's lock on AR. So if you're hard relying on these cheese items because, Fortnite usually has one, then that's something, again, that is stunting your growth and probably making you not improve as much as you would in that time if you didn't rely on that item. If you just want to play for fun and you enjoy using the item, whatever. But if you do want to get better at the game, which you're 10 minutes into a video about improving at the game, you probably do want to get better. And if that's the case, you probably want to stop relying on the cheese items, especially like the extreme ones. Like the lock on AR, I think, is a very clear example of that, as just like we can all agree it's cheesy and annoying. If that's the only way you can get kills and that's the only way you can get eliminations, you're not really improving at the game. And so when that item is gone, you're gonna miss it a lot, and that's like wasted time in terms of improvement. But if you get better with just more core regular items, sure, the iron pump will get replaced by a different pump one day. Whatever AR is meta will get replaced by a different AR one day. But if you build the skills of using the more traditional weapons, there's usually always something like that that's useful. There's some sort of shotgun that's going to be the meta because it's Fortnite. There's some sort of AR that's going to be good because it's Fortnite. Mobility items. Again, some people think it's a waste of an item slot to use them. But if you've played for a while and gotten good at the game, you know that mobility is essential in Zero Build. And shockwaves might not be in the loot pool next season, but there will be some mobility item. And learning how to use these mobility items and playing off them and learning how to use the more traditional items in the loot pool will help you improve more in the long term than relying on like the crutch cheese lock on AR example. There's always something in the loot pool that's, more cheesy or low skill, but if you're only relying on that to get kills, it's not benefiting you in the long term. And I think that's something that holds a lot of players back, in addition to caring too much about wins and then playing very risk averse. As I said early on in the video, the entire core of this is be okay with less success in the short term to work towards more success in the long term. And I think that's just what you need to keep in mind if you do want to improve at Fortnite or pretty much anything else. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.